Welcome to the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. We're Thomas and Julie Hobby. We've been married for 17 years and have 4 kids. We have 9-year-old twin boys, a 4-year-old daughter, and a 1-year-old son. And we're marriage coaches. So we have this podcast, but you can also find more about us at marriagepuzzle.com, where you can set up a free discovery call with us. We'd love to jump on a video call and learn more about you and your spouse and how we can maybe help you as marriage coaches.
Yeah, and we've been doing this podcast for a long time now, and we are actually coming back from a pause that we took in the podcast. We planned on pausing for just about a month, and unfortunately, that pause ended up being longer than we anticipated. Our 1-year-old that we just mentioned had to have major surgery, and so that delayed a lot of things, kind of turned our world upside down a little bit, at least in terms of a scheduling perspective, what we thought we were going to be able to accomplish. And so we just had to just embrace that pause for a little bit longer. But we are excited to be back creating again. It's exciting to get back on the mics again and try and put out some new content for everybody who's listening. And we have a goal of trying to release a new episode each month. And so that's what we're going to shoot for, and hopefully we can get that content out for you.
Yeah, so we're going to kick off this new podcast with telling you about the worst date ever, which happened while we were on pause, right?
Yeah.
Things are a lot better when we can actually sit down at this table and connect, and we just hit record on these podcasts and don't edit them. But we like to come up with topics that would help encourage you in your marriage, but maybe even challenge you in your marriage. And so maybe this one will do both.
Hopefully.
That we're human. We're not perfect in our marriage, but we like to learn from that and talk a lot about how to make things better. So our worst date ever. So within 17 years of marriage and dating before that, was this summer, and we got a sitter for all 4 kids. So, well, actually, no, the baby went with us.
Yeah.
I forget.
He tags along
the
most
3
of the time.
kids. I was like, we got a sitter. It feels like a night out when we just have one with us. So yeah, that kind of added to it. So we had plans to go to the Cheesecake Factory, and so we knew we were going out for dessert. We didn't expect to get in and have a table for us and the baby. So it was probably a weekend night, and so we just embraced that. We're like, you know what? Let's just do curbside. We'll eat dessert in the car, and we'll talk.
Yeah, we anticipated it actually being quiet. If you've listened to very many of our podcast episodes in the past, then you might have heard us say that it's very difficult for us to have a conversation that's uninterrupted. With 4 kids around. Somebody's always interrupting us. So we were like, well, Jordan's just going to sleep in the back seat. We'll get to eat our dessert in the front seat and just have a conversation. And it didn't go that way.
He didn't get that memo, so
Yeah.
Jordan cried like the whole time. I think right when we got dessert, because I don't know, it was like one of us eating, one of us comforting. We switched places in the car. Like, you drove there, I ended up driving home.
We
I don't know.
parked in like a grocery store parking lot to try and eat dessert.
We could have gone to a park or something and made it a little bit more romantic and taken the baby out of the car seat, but we didn't think it through. We didn't plan it. I think in our minds it was just a night out. Like, we had been homebound for so long, and even taking the baby, like you said, it was just going to be our night out to talk, and that felt different than talking at home.
Right.
So I was excited. I was looking forward to it. We had our dessert, and then you were good.
Well,
you were done.
Well, that's a little bit extreme, but because he was crying, Jordan was crying and so upset in the back of the car. Like you said, we got him out and took turns taking care of him in the front seat while we exchanged opportunities to scarf down our dessert. He was still crying, so I was like, well, we accomplished our task. We went out on a date. We couldn't have a conversation because, he was just screaming his head off in the car. And so I was like, well, why don't we just go home then? No big deal. Like, that, just chalk it up to a loss and move on. That's how I felt about it. I felt like it was mission accomplished
Yeah.
to the best of our ability.
And I felt differently, but I didn't express that. It's not like we fought. It was actually more quiet than on the drive home,
Yeah, true.
because you just made that comment like, cool, let's go home. And in my mind, it was like 10 minutes. Like we spent more time driving there than we did actually like in the parked car talking and then had to drive home. And so I just felt like it was a wasted opportunity of getting a sitter and going out. So I'm like trying to think of something else to do, but I didn't express that on the front end or even like really open up to talk to you about that with possibilities. Like your mind were going home and I'm now driving and I'm like quiet and trying to drive somewhere that could keep the night going. So we ended up at a farmer's market. It's like, there's something happening right there. Let's park here and get out and walk and talk again. But by then we knew something was, off. I think we found a coffee shop and sat outside at that point.
Yeah, we did. It was right next door to the farmer's market,
Yeah.
and we sat outside for about 3 minutes before the coffee shop started closing and started dragging their tables inside, which is the universal sign of
Goodbye.
please leave so that we can all go home. And so we were like, well, this is done too. And so I think at that point we really ended up leaving and going home. So
Yeah. So what did we learn from that? Because then you have to face a sitter at home, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no good of like, okay, well, we'll talk it out and everything. You kind of have to like put on this face, like, thank you for coming over, and So, I don't know if we talked about it that night or the next day, but we're like, let's talk about what happened, like how we dropped the ball, because we're just at the point we both weren't satisfied.
Yeah.
We just kind of like did it because we knew we needed to go out and date and go on a date and have quality time with each other, but really was it worth it?
Yeah, I mean, in all aspects, like I would say aside from the learning experience we got out of it, nothing about it was worth it that night. Nothing, like it wasn't worth the time for our babysitter to come over. I say that, but let's be real. It was a grandparent, and of course he enjoyed spending time with the other kids at home. But, even still, you feel bad that you have them come all the way over and watch your kids, and we don't spend a significant amount of time out because it just kind of fell apart on us. So, we really learned that intentionality isn't the only ingredient to a good date. And, because we were intentional, we put it on the calendar, we got the sitter, we got the kids covered, we knew where we were going to get dessert, and we knew it was just going to be dessert. And so all of the intentional pieces were in place. What wasn't in place was what's going to happen if something goes wrong. Like, we didn't have a backup plan, which in most cases you don't, but we also didn't have backup expectations. We didn't have the freedom to know that if something went wrong, what would our expectations be? Would we be going home, or would we be shifting gears and doing something different? So
Yeah, and that was me too. If not, I don't know, I was scared to just be like, hey, this isn't working, with the baby crying. Let's decide together what we should do. I just think that when you said like, okay, let's go home, I don't think your intentions were to hurt my feelings, but I was kind of like not feeling loved in that moment. And so when it came time to like, okay, we need to try this again, right? Like we are, if you've listened to previous podcasts, because when we were on pause, I know some of you got to catch up on that. We appreciated that you were still listening and connecting with us on social media and things. But, we talk about the frequency of dating, but this, even dating your spouse, but this was now learning more about the expectations and intentionality.
Yeah.
So we're
and
good
communicating those expectations.
Yes, so
That's
we're
the
good
other
on
piece.
the intentionality. And so we try to step up our game on our, next time that we could salvage what we could. And so a few weeks later, we decided to take a day date where the older kids were in school and got a sitter this time for the baby. So it was just us. And I know not everybody's in the situation to get sitters. We've been there. We've lived out of state from family and stuff like that. But now we know like the value of that, of not having a tag along, like just the two of us. It changed the game of us just being relaxed and having fun. So we decided to go paddleboarding for the day. And I think what we did well with that date was the pre-planning. Honestly, we kind of split up our task of how we were going to invest in this day. So what I have, like, okay, I'll get the sitter, I'll pick the place and the details and stuff like that, and the planning, and I needed your help to get all the stuff ready, which was a lot.
Right. And there was a little communication hiccup in me getting the stuff ready that we worked out proactively before the date happened. To just give a little bit more to the story, you had asked me to get the stuff ready, and in my mind I was like, okay, as long as I have it ready before Friday when we're leaving to go do this, then we're good. But I think, you had wanted it done Monday or Tuesday, have everything tested, prepped, make sure that we had it all ready to go. And I hadn't done that. And so rather than just be upset with me when you realized that hadn't been accomplished according to your expectations, you just talked to me about it.
Yeah, I remember it was Thursday night, so the night before. And it was kind of like, so are you going to do that? And again, like, not ill intent. You were like, yeah, by Friday morning. And I'm like, it's Thursday night. But because I learned to speak up more that time about how I was feeling versus the dessert date in the car, and I like bottled those feelings because they weren't big feelings. Like I said, it wasn't a big fight. It was just kind of like, I just felt left down. And then I can get in my head of like, you love me and I know you love me, but those things are like, I feel unloved in that moment. And so for the paddleboards, as simple as that was, I learned to speak up that night and say, okay, I would feel better. I would feel loved, more loved if you got it together tonight so we're not rushed in the morning, so we can just enjoy tomorrow. But it felt like you had forgotten about it. And when I opened up, then you're like, no, not at all. Like, I'll do it right now. You jumped up and
like
you did
the good
it.
husband I am. I jumped up and...
Because you weren't thinking, oh, I'm going to let her down and sabotage this date. But I could have just gone to bed that night and gotten my head and been disappointed for unmet expectations. But if I didn't communicate those, then I'm letting you fail.
Right.
And once I expressed that, it was nice to just be met with like, oh, didn't know that was what you meant by Friday. So we're good, and you did it. And then that date turned out a lot better. Yeah. A lot more fun. And so, yeah, those were two worst date, better date.
Yeah. We're not saying that it's a complete contrast that the paddleboarding was the best date ever, but in terms of how expectations were communicated and what we learned and how to make it a better date, it definitely was a huge improvement from the first one. But, so we're not saying that every date has to be perfectly planned out, every single T crossed, every I dotted. But we are saying that you each have to communicate your expectations for the date. And so that way, if your plans do go awry, you know how to make that adjustment on the fly and keep going and still enjoy yourselves.
Yeah. So that's what we got for coming back after this pause. Just a coffee and conversations about dating your spouse. But we love talking about communication, intimacy, money in your marriage. Those kind of topics we'll be coming back at you with. So you can always reach out on social media at Marriage Puzzle and let us know maybe a hot topic in your marriage right now. What do you want us to prepare content for and address? Either something we've brought up before and you want us to expand on, or a new topic. We're always loving fresh new ideas. And like we said earlier, you can check out more at marriagepuzzle.com. But other than that, I think we just want to say thanks for listening. Thanks for being patient with us on this. And we hope you join us next time.
Yeah, we'll see you then.